In 1984, 4 of us were sent into the Appalachians on what they called a routine run. Just woods, hills, and an old ghost town at the end of a dirt road. But the woods weren't empty. Heavy footsteps stalked us, like Bigfoot was out there. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. We thought it was just something paranormal, but it wasn't that simple. That was only the beginning. Inside the ghost town, beneath a rotting house, we found a hatch, a government lab. Rusted tanks, restraints, files stamped, Project Red Ridge. Then we saw a photograph of our own convoy dated 1952. That's when the radio hissed alive and whispered, "You shouldn't be here." So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. I was a squad leader back then. Not much rank, just enough to get yelled at by both sides. Top came down on me. The butter bar tried to be my friend. The guys listened or didn't. Same as any week. We were told it was a training thing. Mountain lanes, convoy discipline, check an old relay site, stay 2 nights, maybe 3. Appalachia. Back roads that curled like a whip. Pines, laurel, rock faces like old teeth. Rusted trailers leaning in damp hollows. Dogs that didn't bark. Creeks that ran cold and thin. 2 trucks. 1 old radio van rattling like loose bones. Our squad in back. Me. Cruz with jokes. Price with a mean laugh. Bishop on the radio, always riding the knob, babying it. Yates the medic, pocket full of cheap candy. Ree, the quiet one. Noel driving like the road owed him money. Hardy and Moss with rifles and 1,000 bad ideas. Owens, the butter bar, fresh shine on his bars and eyes too clear for where we were going. We rolled out in the afternoon, heat hung low. Sky heavy with a storm that didn't decide. We ate jerky and cursed the map. The pavement broke into patched scars, then into gravel, then into dirt. A sign with buckshot holes told us the town name. It looked like a joke, a word somebody made up and then forgot. We weren't spooked, not then. We were bored, dust in our teeth, pines slapping the side mirror, a crow on a power line looking like bad news that learned to sit. Cruz said, "Bet there's a lake and a bait shop and the best cheeseburgers on earth." He always believed in a lucky turn. I told him to shut up and check his kit. The radio hissed. Bishop smacked it with the heel of his hand like it was a rat. He leaned to me. "Range is weird out here, Sarge. Like the air is thick." "Yeah," I said. "Mountains." We drove. Past a coal tipple eaten by vines. Past a church steeple without the church. Past a graveyard where the stones leaned like they were listening. People had left. Weather had stayed. That's how it felt. We parked before dark at a flat spot above a creek. Pines made a roof. We pulled security like the book said. We warmed cans on a little stove and pretended it tasted like food. We joked. We talked about home. We talked about nothing. Normal. That's what it was. That's how it starts. You live your life, then a hinge moves. Sometimes you hear it, sometimes you don't. The first thing was the footsteps, not ours, not animal, heavy, pacing us from the trees when we pulled off to drain out and stretch, feet crunching laurel. A big breath, then nothing, like it knew when to stop. Cruz squinted into the green. Big boy out there, black bear maybe. "No bear walks like that," Reese said. Ree didn't talk much. When he did, you listened. We threw jokes at it, because that's what you do when your gut tells you to go. We stood around and pissed and made like it was funny. Then we got back in the trucks and didn't talk for a while. As the light fell, the woods came close. Needles went black. Shapes crowded the road. My night vision flickered once, twice. Like a bad bulb. I told myself it was just sweat on the lens. I told myself a lot of things. Thermal had a burp in it too. Bishop held it up and showed me a shape on the edge of heat. Tall. Shoulders like a doorframe. Head too big, then again maybe it was leaves. We slowed. The shape vanished. We walked out with rifles up. The woods just breathed. That was all. We pushed on. The second thing was the talk. Not ours. Old folks in town like to tell stories. We didn't have town, but we had truck stops and gas stations where the coffee tastes like coins. We stopped for fuel in a place with one pump and a bell that rang when you pulled in. A woman with white hair and a cigarette told us the road we wanted. She stared at our rifles too long. She said real quiet, "You boys going to Red Ridge?" "Training area," Owen said, cheerful like a school field trip. She shook her head. "Ain't been training up there since before my daddy." Whole ridge shut down. Folks went missing. My granddad said men came with trucks and radios, and they left with less than they brought. She flicked ash. "You don't hear hymns at night and think that's God talking. Remember that." We laughed in the trucks, but soft. The laugh that has room for belief. Back on the road, the radio caught a voice none of us owned, not just static, not weather. A voice that sounded like a man standing in another room with the door mostly closed. A few words, then gone. Bishop tuned and said nothing. Night came early in that country. We rolled under a canopy of black, pines and oak and rhododendrons swallowing the last light. The third thing that told me we were off the path was a smell. Not dead, not rot. A chemical sweet like old film and bleach. It made my tongue go numb when we hit a low place where fog spilled across the road. I cracked my window and then shut it quick. "Smells like a hospital that forgot it was a hospital," Yates said. He had a way of saying things that sat in your head all night. We met the 4 soldiers where the dirt thinned and the road widened for a logging turn. They walked out of the trees like they'd been waiting. Full kit, helmets without names, no unit patches. Clean faces. Boots dusty but not worn out. They had rifles older than ours, but not rusted. They smiled. They were young the way you only get to be once. The one in front lifted a hand. "Evening, gents." We braked. Dust rose. I hopped out with my rifle low and my mouth tight. Owens came out too, eager, like a puppy on the edge of a road. "Where are you boys headed?" the front one asked. He had a flat Appalachian tone. "Easy, like a creek." "Relay site," Owen said. "Exercise. Good training up there," another said. "Long walks. Cold nights. You watch your step by the tower. It creaks when the wind shifts sudden." They joked. They made fun of our trucks. They asked if we had real coffee. Cruz handed them a tin. The one in front tapped it with a knuckle like he was checking a melon and grinned. Then my light flickered. A dumb, cheap light clipped to my vest. It went dim, bright, dim again. They were gone between the dim and the bright, not walked away, not ducked. Gone. No brush shake, no foot, no laugh trailing off. Just 4 empty places where weight had been. We stood around like idiots. Owen said their names out loud like maybe he had learned them, but he hadn't. Because they never said. We looked for tracks. The dirt showed ours. A deer, a coyote maybe. Not them. I rubbed the heel of my hand into my eye until sparks danced. That didn't help. We loaded back into the trucks without talking. The world felt switched. Like somebody took our road and put it back wrong. Later, down in the lab, we would find the photographs. The same 4 faces. Same clean haircuts. Smiles like boys catching fish. A stamp across the bottom, Mia, the year 1952. But I'm ahead of it. Back in the trucks, Bishop turned the radio down to a whisper. I could still hear it. A laugh. Price's laugh, except Price hadn't laughed. He sat with his jaw clenched like he was trying to bite through bone. We drove on. We found the town at last light, or what used to be a town. It sat in a fold of hills. 2 streets. A hardware store with a broken window. A diner with painted pies on the sign and booths gathering dust. A church without a door. Houses leaning, boards gray as winter sky. A rusted tower next to a shack full of wires and mice. Tracks led into the hills. Then stopped. The mine had fallen in long ago. The locals took the metal, left the bones of timber. We made a perimeter. We parked the trucks nose out. We cleared the buildings one by one, careful, like they had teeth. Dust breathed out of them, hot and old. Wallpaper peeled in big curls. A raccoon skull on a shelf in what had been a child's room. A doll's head wedged under a hinge, one glass eye staring at us like a warning. We picked the diner as our base. Long counter. A kitchen with a flat top we could use. A back door to kick out if we had to. We laid our sleeping pads in the booths. We put a poncho over the front window where a kid had once taped a picture of a banana split. Cruz said he'd had worse motels. He wasn't wrong. Hunger and habit make places feel normal. For a while it did. The stove warmed hands, the radio hissed low, night pressed on the glass. Then the town woke up. Voices came through our radios that weren't ours. Not just words, names. Mine, Mac, it said. My mother's voice. She called me by a name I hadn't heard since I was small. Behind her, laughter, a hymn I knew but didn't know. The music a little off-key, like someone who only ever heard it through a wall. Bishop looked at me, white rings around his eyes. He reached to switch off and froze. The radio crackled. Now it was Yates, saying he'd found something by the church and needed help. Yates sat 2 feet from me. He didn't move. He stared at the speaker and chewed his lip until it bled. Equipment went missing and came back wrong. Yates set down his aid bag to grab coffee and found it tied shut with old string when he turned back. My map, folded and tucked into my pocket, vanished. I swore. We found it later, tacked to the wall of the hardware store with a nail through the county line. Figures in windows. Shapes at the diner door glass. You'd look. The glass would show you your own scared face. Then you'd turn and see shadow on the second floor across the street. Someone watching. Someone making sure you saw them watching. The tower next to the shack came alive sometime after midnight. Not with power, with sound. An old voice counting letters. Call signs from another century. The hymn again, the one people sing about mercy and grace. Except the words weren't clean. The notes slid wrong. You could taste iron while it played. It sank into your teeth and made you want to grind. We went street to street again. We cleared again. Empty. Dust. Our footprints stacked like bad math. No new prints. Nothing living. Not even a mouse. We returned to the diner and sat with weapons on our knees and didn't trust the windows. The wind brushed the poncho and made it breathe at us. Owen said, soft, "This is a local prank. Old busted radio in the tower catching some wave. Kids playing spooky." Cruz said, "Yeah, sir. Kids who can do my mom's voice when she was 30. Owens didn't have an answer. He just nodded and bit the inside of his cheek. At dawn, we were still awake. I felt like my bones had been hollowed and used as flutes for bad music. I wanted coffee. I wanted a normal problem. I wanted whether I could put a name on. Instead, I got what we came for. I got Red Ridge. We found the hatch by accident. That's how secrets like to be found. By people who aren't looking at the right time. The house sat crooked at the edge of town. Porch sagging, door gone. A line of old jars on the kitchen counter filled with dust. The upstairs floor had fallen into the living room some time ago. The beams rotted. A couch squashed under boards like a bug. Null went through the kitchen floor. It wasn't far. He didn't break anything. He swore loud enough to bring down the ceiling. We lit him up with a flashlight. He crouched in a crawl space with a concrete wall behind him that did not belong to the house. We cleared a path with a shovel we took from the hardware store. Under the kitchen floor, behind that concrete, a steel hatch lay buried in dirt and old time. Bolts like fists. A handle you had to lean into with your shoulder. We opened it because of course we did. That's what soldiers do when they should leave well alone. We opened things. A smell came out that had waited decades to be free. Cold, chemical, metal. The sweet bleach smell in the fog, but concentrated until it bit the back of the throat and made your eyes cry. Ree went first. He always wanted to be point. He had a way of moving in dark. We followed into a narrow stairwell that dropped forever. Our lights cut cones out of damp air. Mold like green fur on the walls. Waterline stains. At the bottom, a door stood open. Somebody had left in a hurry once, or they had never left at all. The lab had been a lab long enough to rot. Rust had eaten anything it could. Wires curled from panels like dead vines. Glass tanks lined one room, each with cloudy soup in them. Things floated inside, human ones. Then not. Limbs too long. A hand with an extra thumb. A face with too many teeth, softened by water but still smiling like a hook. Ribs that had learned to knit themselves in strange angles. Restraints lay in a ring on the floor. Bolted. Heavy straps with dark stains. The bolts had deep gouges where someone had tried to claw them up or bite them off. Maps on a wall. Red circles. Labeled with the ridge's name and numbers. Containment zones. I touched one with my glove and my light stuttered. It came back. The map didn't change. My stomach did. Files in gray steel drawers, none locked, most swollen with damp. We pried pages apart with a knife like picking scabs. Stamps on every other sheet, classified, Project Red Ridge. Names of places around us, names of men, names of oddities, subject lists, notes, diagrams with perfect lines done by someone who never wanted to sleep again. Sketches of bodies not meant to be, human spliced with animal shapes. Small notes in the margin like the artist was trying to trick himself into believing. Vocal mimicry observed. Sustained strength beyond predicted. Airborne subject unstable. Drawings of a winged shape with eyes marked as a hazard in bright pencil, circles around retinal luminescence. A moth of a man that looked like a fall off a bridge. Alien craft diagrams that felt wrong to look at, not saucers. More like bones. Arrows pointed to plates, handwritten radiation, again and again with different numbers. Photos of boys in uniforms with black bars over their eyes and stamps across the bottom, terminated, failed. We turned to dust. Audio reels sat on the shelf in a clear case. The labels curled but still readable. We found a working recorder in a desk and fed power to it from a crank battery Yates swore would never run. It ran. The recorder clicked and squealed and then played a woman's voice first, calm. Behavioral manipulation. Subject failed containment at 0320. Subject mimicked familial voice patterns, provoked release. Negative outcome. Team leader Ross deceased. Subject displays resistance to sedatives and restraints. Note, do not answer the radio if called by name after lights out. My name said itself in the back of my head. I shook it off like rain. Another voice, a man now nervous. Field test 2. Subjects show augmented movement in low light. The forest seems to favor them. We advise no action without full daylight and at least a squad strength plus flame. His voice broke on that last word. He coughed. He said softer, something is wrong with the tape. I hear hymns when it turns. If anyone finds this, tell my boy I did not mean to leave him. We stood there and did not look at each other. The lab hummed even without power. A memory of electricity lives in places like that. It stays in the corners and waits to crawl up your arms. On the back wall knew the maps, photos, fresh compared to the others. The paper still slick, faces we knew. The 4 soldiers from the road, smiling like they were about to hitch a ride to town and drink beer and talk nice to girls. The stamp across each photo, Mia. Year, 1952. Owens put his hand on one like he was a priest, blessing it. No, he said, like a prayer. No, no. My light guttered. I smacked it. It came back up. The room felt smaller. The last drawer we opened stuck. I yanked hard and fell back when it jumped the track. A file slid out and slapped the floor. A photograph peeked from the folder. It was us. Our convoy. 2 trucks. Bishop hanging out the passenger window, grinning like a fool. My shoulders hunched the way they get after long miles. The tower in the background. All of it taken from higher ground. Dated in neat ink at the bottom like whoever stamped the others had taken care with this one too. The date said 1952. The stamp said pending evaluation. Owen said my name. Not like a friend, like a man falling. We should have left then. We did not. Because the door shut. Not a person. The building. It decided. The hatch we had opened above, the one that breathed out old bleach, slammed like a hand the size of a car. Dust rained. The room shook and part of the ceiling cracked and fell. We coughed in the white cloud and lost sight of each other for a breath that felt like a mile. The radio on Bishop's chest screamed, not feedback. A voice, not ours, not ours. Not one voice, a lot. A choir of wrong. Some laughing, some praying, some just saying our names under their breath like trying them out. You ask what fear is. Fear isn't the thing in the dark. Fear is the voice of your mother calling you by a name she only used when your fever was high, coming out of a radio underground in a place that eats light. We ran the hall. The lab wasn't a maze. It just felt like one. Every door opened into a room that made us wish it didn't. A surgical room with walls etched with fingernail scratches all at the same height. A break room with playing cards stuck in a table like teeth. An office with a calendar still open to a month with no year, each day crossed out until the last had 3 lines in a circle and the word after. The tanks knocked as we passed them, not pipes, not settling. Knock, knock. Then from the one with the long hand, a tap back. Like it knew how many we were. Like it was counting. Price's lamp cut out. He cursed and fumbled and it came back. In that dark half-second, something moved near the floor. Fast. It touched my boot. Not hard. Curious. Like a cat with a bad plan. We hustled to the stairs and found the hatch above wedged by angle and time. Couldn't budge it. We set security. I called for a breacher method we didn't have. Noel tried a jack and got nowhere. Yates asked me if we should shoot the hinges. I said no. He asked me again with his eyebrows. I said no again louder. Back down, I said. We'll find another way. Back down we went. We found another hall we had missed. Maybe it had not been there. Maybe we had turned wrong. A chain-link door stood at the end. Beyond it, a big room with concrete and metal rails above like a tiny train had once rolled through. Restraint rings welded everywhere. And on the far wall, a hole. Not man-made. The rock had been cut, then broken. The lab had dug into something that did not want to be dug. Cold air came from that hole. Cold like old caves. A smell of dirt and river and something sweet under it that made me swallow. The radio said, clear as church, you shouldn't be here. A child's voice. We turned as one to Bishop. He shook his head. Not me. His fingers hovered over the knob like he could make choice go away. I put a hand on the fence door. It opened the wrong way. Inside the big room, someone had dragged a circle with chalk once. 2 circles, one on the floor, one on the wall. Notes beside them, written neat. Visual anchor. Containment fails if line breaks. Chant unhelpful. Whoever wrote that had been funny once, then maybe not. We listened. Water dripped. Metal pinged softly as it cooled. The hymn came again from nowhere, like a radio in the next building, like a neighbor in an apartment you don't have. My stomach rolled. Owen said, we're leaving. Right now. His voice had the brittle in it, the kind that breaks or cuts. We turned to leave. We found the 4 soldiers by the chain-link door. They wore the same clean grins, the same boots with dust. Not one of them breathed hard. Not one of them sweated. The one in front lifted his hand like before. Evening again, gents, he said. His mouth moved a hair off from the sound. It took my brain a second to catch up and then refused to. Cruz raised his rifle. The boy's smile did not change. He stepped forward. Don't, I said. Cruz shook. He was brave, but brave is thin. The second one spoke. You got coffee? The same joke. The same intonation. Like a tape winding back to the same line. We backed up. They matched us like a mirror. Smile, step, tilt of the head. Their eyes, though, were old. Not wise, just used too hard. Behind us, the hole in the wall breathed out a longer cold. Something large shifted its weight on stone. It dragged a hand. Maybe it did not have a word for hand. The 4 soldiers stopped. They tilted their heads together, like birds. The front one's mouth moved. My mother said my name again. He said other names too. Yates's kid, Price's ex, Owens's sister. Names nobody in that room had told anyone. I said, circle up. My guys did. Habit saves you until it doesn't. We moved as a lump back toward the tanks. The chain link closed. The 4 watched us go and did not follow. Their smiles stayed where they were like masks glued on wrong. Back in the first hall, the lights we hadn't turned on were on. Greenish, sick. They flickered and made shadows jump like rope. We made it to the office with the maps. The hymn louder here. The tape recorder began to click all by itself. The woman's voice again. Escalation phase. Subjects show learning behavior. Do not address by given names. Do not look directly into eyes if visible. She laughed at that, a short broken laugh. They made eyes for us where eyes don't go, Price said. That's it. He grabbed a map and ripped it down and balled it up and threw it. It hit the wall and stuck. Something on it was wet. We set up in the office. We stacked desks. We closed the door. We aimed rifles at air. We waited for air to come at us. Something walked past. Heavy. Drag. Drag, step, drag, drag. The floor groaned above like someone big had finally decided to lie down. We slept in shifts. Or we didn't. I saw my grandmother in my half-dream. She sang the hymn slow, her mouth opened too wide and black spilled out. We didn't shoot, not at first. You don't shoot a thing you don't understand unless it moves like it me. Mourning in a hole isn't mourning. It's when the batteries are a little warmer in your hands. It's when your eyes stop burning. It's when the voices take a breath. We ate a cold can each because the act of eating meant we were still people. We picked a plan. The hatch was frozen. The chain-link door led to a thing in stone. There had to be service tunnels. Air had to go somewhere. Water did. We would find where. We moved out. The lab felt smaller and bigger at the same time, like it had been built only to match us step for step. The tanks were quiet. The straps on the floor had more cracks in the leather than they had last night. I didn't say that out loud. We found a side door behind a hanging curtain of plastic that had wanted to be clean once. Beyond it, a narrow tunnel with conduit and old pipes and the skeletons of rats. It sloped up. We could feel the hill through our boots for the first time. I started to believe we'd make it. The wing thing took that as a cue. We heard it before we saw it. A rush of air in a space that should not have wind. A scrape of claw on concrete high. A soft sound like someone trimmed paper with a dull scissor. Lights went. Our lamps hiccuped. The world got thin at the edges. Eyes glowed. Not bright. Just catching every bit of light and sending it back wrong. Hovering higher than a person could stand. A body too thin to carry wings, except it did, perched like it had practiced in a gym built for nightmares. Ends to take you apart. It did not move like that. It moved like it wanted to be seen, like it wanted to be believed. Then it opened its mouth, not to bite, to speak. "Mac," it said in my voice. That was enough. The hallway filled with muzzle flashes and smoke and noise that you feel in your throat. Bullets hit concrete and took bites out of the wall. Chips cut our faces. The thing flew forward, not fast, calm, like a coat on a breeze. It folded over us, and the world went cloth dark and metal cold, and I smelled the river again and the sweet chemical that had lived here longer than any of us. It shrieked then, not words. A sound like spinning a wet finger around the rim of a glass until it breaks. Yates fell. His hand went to his ear and came away red. Ree fired a controlled pair straight up. I saw black fluid drip, shine, then just be gone. "Back," I said. We moved like a small animal in a tube, all legs in panic. The thing left us as it came. The wind went with it. The glowing eyes hung a second in the doorway and then blinked out like fireflies going home. We pushed. Tunnels turned and climbed. Behind us, steps, heavy, patient. In the rooms we had left, metal squealed like it was being asked to do work it hated. In a big service room where pipes crossed like bad ideas, we found the 4 soldiers waiting again. This time their smiles were frayed. The front one's cheeks were too still. The skin pulled wrong, like it had been painted. He lifted his hand. The hand didn't match the wrist. "Coffee," he said. Crew started crying. Not loud, just a leak. He kept his rifle on target. He was the bravest man I knew that day. I stepped forward because somebody has to step forward. "Who are you?" I asked. "Us," they said together. They stepped aside. Behind them, a door with exit stenciled on it in flaking paint. The 4 bowed, a little, like gentlemen. The front one winked. His eyelids stuck shut for a beat too long, then tore back open with a tiny sound. Like cellophane. We edged past. The door opened to stairs up. The best word on earth. We made it to the hatch and found it still wedged, but the light above looked like day. I could smell trees. I could smell a storm that finally decided. "Breach it," I said. We did not have explosives. We had rifles and stubborn. We fired at hinges and cursed at steel and knelt so Ree could wedge his blade under the rim. Bryce and I got a pry bar under and heaved until veins stood in our necks like bad ropes. The hatch moved. A hair, then a whisper. Then it jumped, screaming metal, and slammed back into place above with a bang that will live in my bad ear until I die. Fresh air fell on us like a blanket. It was the first good, tasteable thing in that whole place. We climbed out into a ruined kitchen and a gray morning and rain that finally remembered how to be rain. The diner across the street looked almost friendly again. The tower moaned with wind, not hymns. The radio in Bishop's hand said only weather like it had been doing it all its life. We did not cheer. We got small. We scanned. We stacked on doors that had no one behind them. We moved for the trucks because nothing in the world was more beautiful than a way out. The 4 soldiers stood in the street as if they'd been poured there. Water ran off them. They still grinned. They looked for a second like I could invite them to ride on our bumpers, and they'd whoop and say yes. The front one said, "Don't leave yet, you haven't seen the best." Behind them, from the tree line, the heavy thing came. I had seen it twice now, once as a heat smear, once as a pace in the dark. Seeing it straight did not make it better. It was a head above a doorframe, shoulders like a freezer, hair matted and gray like old rope, hands like paddles, eyes small and wet and human in a way that made me sicker than anything in the tanks. It moved like a man who had learned to be other things. It came out of the trees with patience, like it had been pacing itself for years and now decided it deserved its turn. We fired. Of course we did. The first volley hit its center. It took them like rain. It hurried a step, and that made the difference. Bullets found joints. It grunted. It was not a roar. It was a sound I have heard from a human who takes a bad hit and can't believe their skin did that. It came anyway. It grabbed a mailbox and twisted it free like a weed. It swung. The box dented Yates's chest. He flew and did not get up. I still see that. Ree took a knee and put rounds into the hip. The big thing dropped on one knee. Price stepped in like a man in a bar fight and raked a burst across the eyes. One eye popped like a grape. The other turned red and then black, and then it looked past us, through us, to somewhere the lab had drilled. The 4 soldiers clapped. Slow, polite, polite. They kept clapping after we had stopped shooting. Their hands left streaks on their sleeves that did not look like water. "Stop," the front one said. "Stop shooting." We didn't. He sighed. His jaw unhinged a little with the breath. He reached up and pushed it back into place with a click. Behind us, the tower roared to life. Not wind, not him. Static and voices like layers of old tape wound together. Somewhere in there, a child again. "You shouldn't be here." The big thing stood. It bled black. It took a deep breath and let out a sound like a man trying to remember how to cry. It charged. We broke line. We split. That saved us. It took the space where we had been and hit the diner front. The glass went in the sheet. The poncho flap blew out like a flag surrendering. The counter flipped. The big thing stood there amid pies painted on a sign and sniffed like it could smell a life it had never had. "Now," I said. "Go." We ran for the trucks. We dragged Yates by his vest. He made a sound once and then not again. Crews wept and kept moving. The 4 soldiers watched us with their heads cocked and their smiles like masks that hurt. Bishop started the first truck. It coughed. It caught. I threw Yates up and Price and Ree piled in after. The big thing turned, slow, dumb with pain and rage. The second truck wouldn't start. Noel hit the key. Nothing. He hit it again. The lights flickered and died. He said a word I won't say in a church. He hit the wheel. Owens climbed into the radio van and back and started twisting cables. He was not trained for that. He made sparks anyway. The radio screamed in a chorus. All the hymns at once. Every wrong note made worse by all the other wrong notes. A woman said the word containment like she was praying for a job back. The big thing stepped toward us. The 4 soldiers stepped aside like ushers. I did a stupid thing then that worked. I threw the photograph at them, our convoy. The date in neat ink. Pending evaluation. It hit the front one in the chest and stuck with the rain. He looked down. His face moved for the first time. Not a smile now. A twitch. Anger maybe. Or fear. Or a memory that hurt. "Who took that?" I said. "Who took our picture before we got here?" He looked up. For a second, his eyes were the eyes of a boy I would have trusted under fire. He opened his mouth. A moth fell out. A real one. It fluttered once and died in the rain. Then the radio said, in a voice older than the ridge and younger than my guilt, "You shouldn't be here." The diner exploded. Not a fireball. Not Hollywood. The stove had been on with our cans when the thing hit the counter and knocked the gas loose, and the oven door had wedged at a bad angle, and the pilot had been a spark in a world full of dry dust. The front blew. Wood and glass and the smell of old fat went up. The heat shoved the big thing sideways, staggered it. Its hair flashed and went out, singed. It howled. That howl finally sounded like an animal. We used the wind of the blast, the noise, the moment when all the wrong turned its head. We piled into the first truck. Noel leapt from the dead second truck and got in too, landing on Yates's legs without meaning to and flinching like he'd hit a grave. "Drive," I said. Bishop drove. The truck fishtailed on mud. We clipped the mailbox. We climbed over a curb that had not seen a tire in decades. We hit the road out with 2 wheels on gravel and 2 on grass, and all the weight of the lab behind us like a hand trying to keep a toy. The 4 soldiers ran beside us for a dozen steps. They ran fast, faster than we could. Then they stopped as if a line were drawn across the road. They raised their hands and waved like we were leaving a barbecue. The big thing chased us a few strides and then fell to one knee and went down on its side with a sigh that sounded human. It lay in the rain and lifted one arm like to shield its face. It looked small then. I hated that. I hated that it could look small. We drove and drove. The radio went silent. Then it gave a weather report for a county we weren't in anymore. Good enough. We didn't stop until the road turned back to pavement and the mountains were behind us and the sky opened like it had forgiven us. We filed the report. Of course we did. How do you report a hymn and a hole and 4 soldiers stamped with a year older than your father? You write what you can. You leave out what gets you laughed out of a room. You keep the part that maybe keeps someone alive later. Top read it and didn't look at me for a day. The butter bar sat in his office with the door half closed and a map spread out and his hands on either side of it like he was trying to keep it from crawling away. A man in a suit came and talked to us. He had a haircut like he never needed a barber and shoes that had never seen mud. He smiled small and said words like appreciate and attach and review. He took our gear for inspection and gave it back cleaner. He took the photograph I had kept from the lab. He said it was a lapse for me to hold it. He didn't call it evidence. He didn't call it anything. He never said Red Ridge. Yates didn't come back. He is the part of this that has a date you can write. The rest has the kind of dates that feel like dreams. Sometimes at night I hear the hymn, not the words, just the shape of it. It sits outside the window and hums. It doesn't belong to any church I ever went to. It belongs to the tower and the wet smell of the lab and the hands that pushed at bolts from the wrong side. Sometimes I see the 4 soldiers at the edge of a parking lot watching. No one else looks. They nod. They want coffee. I keep walking. Years later, I got a package without return. Inside, a photocopy, grainy. The photo they took for me or a twin of it. Our convoy. 2 trucks. Bishop half out the window, grin too big. My shoulders hunched again, like that's how they always are in that picture. The bottom had the neat ink date, 1952. The stamp said pending evaluation. Below that, as if someone had pressed too hard with a coin on paper and left a shine, 4 sets of fingerprints smeared the margin. I burned it after a while. I thought fire would make it clean. It turned white, then black. Then it broke and the ash floated like something pulled it up from the floor. Every now and then, in that slip space right before sleep, the radio in my head wakes up. It crackles. The woman says the word containment and laughs and catches herself. A man whispers a name I won't repeat. My mother hums even though she hasn't been around to hum for years. And under all that, like a keel under a boat, a child says, "You shouldn't be here," gentle as a bedtime. Maybe the ridge keeps a clock on us. Maybe we never left the lab. Maybe the hatch never opened, and everything after is a practice tape someone plays to see where we crack. I know this much: the woods had more than bears. The town had more than ghosts. The stories people tell about big footprints and red eyes in the dark, and angels with moth wings landed on windshields. Those stories had men behind them once. Men with files and stamps and diagrams. Men who drew circles in chalk and believed lines could make cages. Men who thought you could teach a voice to be a weapon and then live with it. If you ever drive those roads, and you hear hymns when the tower is dead, and you see clean boys in old helmets without patches who want coffee they don't drink, and you feel the earth beneath you like a sleeping chest about to rise, turn around. Some things are training you back while you think you're training up. Some things learn your name faster than you can learn their rules. Some things wait decades just to meet your eyes once and see if you look away. The last time I told this by a fire, a kid laughed. Said he'd hike up there and camp. Said he didn't scare easy. I told him fear isn't a thing you beat. It's a thing that comes with you so you don't touch the stove twice. He rolled his eyes. Youth rolls its eyes a lot. When we packed up that night and kicked sand over coals, my radio, the one I don't carry anymore, the one that sits dead on a shelf in my garage, clicked. No battery, no wire, no reason. I listened. I heard breathing, then a click, then a voice like a page turning. You shouldn't be here. And I'm not up there. Not in the map, not in the chalk circle, not in the pictures with stamps, but some part of me is. Some part of me stands in that hall with tanks and straps, an old chemical cold and waits for a light to flicker, and 4 boys to smile and a hole in the rock to breathe. If you ever go looking for Red Ridge, don't take my name with you. Don't take any name. Go nameless like water. When they call out from the trees, do not answer. When they stand in the road and ask for coffee, keep driving. When your mother calls you on a radio that is off, keep your mouth shut. When you find the file with pictures that haven't been taken yet, don't touch it. Don't give it your prints. If the hatch above you closes, do not pray to the wrong ceiling. Pray to your legs, pray to your friends, pray to your mean laugh and your dumb jokes and all the ugly human things that make a whole hate you. And if you hear the hymn, hum something else. Anything, even a jingle from a commercial. Fill the air with your own small noise. Remind the dark who you are. Remind yourself. You won't be there long either way. Either you go or you stay. If you go, you drive until the trees stop watching. If you stay, you learn the hymn, and you learn the steps, and you learn the weight of a hand on a mailbox where your heart ought to be. That's all I've got. The fire is down to coals. The beer is gone. The road home is long and good if you don't look in the ditches. Me, I'll sleep with the radio in a drawer and the lights on. Morning will come. It always does. And somewhere a tower with no power will play a song into empty hills and the hills will sing it back. Listen hard and you'll hear the rest. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.